Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Jersey, and Rothkopf Law Group to a webinar on caregiving in the workplace post-COVID-19. My name is Meredith Laura Lear, and I am Executive Vice President of the Chamber. Thank you to everyone who has joined us online today to learn more about this important topic for our businesses, and to our friends from Rothkopf Law Group, Gerald Rothkopf, Managing Attorney, and Kathleen McGee, Director of Care Coordination with the firm. Before I turn the program over to Gerald and Kathleen, please allow me to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console, you will see a chat feature. We encourage you to submit questions for our presenters in this chat feature throughout the presentation, and we will get to as many of them at the conclusion of the program as possible. We will be recording an on-demand version of this presentation, and we will send it to all attendees later today along with a survey. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey and provide your feedback, which helps us shape future programming. With that, please welcome Gerald and Kathleen for the presentation.
Thank you. I think I'm unmuted, correct? Okay.
Yes, you're good.
Good. So Meredith, thank you, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce of Southern New Jersey for organizing this webinar, and we apologize. This was scheduled for about approximately 2 weeks ago, but it had to be rescheduled due to tropical storm. I can't even pronounce the name. But so I'm Jerry Rothkopf. I'm Managing Attorney at Rothkopf Law Group, an elder care law firm based in both Cherry Hill, as well as, and so covering the Southern New Jersey area, as well as Southeastern PA. And we work in both states, and our goal is to support seniors and their caregivers to get the best care, and then devise a game plan to pay for that important care as needed. With us today is Kathleen McGee. Kathleen is Director of Care Coordination for Rothkopf Law Group. I want to say hello, Kathleen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us.
We employ both elder law attorneys and geriatric social workers as part of our elder care office, because we help families navigate the long-term care process. We work with many individuals who have chronic illnesses, be it Parkinson's disease, be it Alzheimer's, dementia, and other stroke survivors and the like. And our focus is to ensure that we address the needs of the senior themselves who's going through some debilitating illness, as well as the caregivers, could be a spouse, could be a child, and help families navigate the long-term care process and provide a holistic solution to their important needs. So today, what we would like to discuss for the next 60 minutes or so is supporting caregiving in the workplace, addressing both the employee issues as well as the employer issues, specifically related to the elder care needs. And we encourage you to ask questions. We'll save time at the end for questions. And as Meredith mentioned, most of you are familiar with the Zoom webinars at this point, and please feel free to address your questions in the chat box provided. So that said, this is I like this statement, this quote, because it's very true. The difference between child care and senior care, in some ways it's the same. And some would say that elder care today is like child care and the issues involved 50 years ago. To a certain extent, I would agree with that, but not always. So this is an interesting quote. When you get right down to it, you have 9 months to prepare for the birth of a child, but it feels like you have 9 seconds to prepare for a crisis with your senior loved one. And this is a quote of the president of a large national home care agency called Home Instead Senior Care. So let's look at a typical situation. This is actually a real life client. This is a typical situation that we get involved with, where in this case the employee, but this would be a caregiver child, contacts us. So the employee gets a phone call at 10 p.m. Unfortunately, the mom who lives several states away just had a significant stroke. And the next 72 hours in a blur and sleep deprivation prevails. While the mother is in the intensive care unit, the employee is trying to gather, this is the child, to gather all the mother's important papers, make decisions, keep everyone in the family informed, and trying to get work done. 3 weeks later, the employee returns to the office after taking care of the parent for the past several weeks, out of town at the parent's home or where the parent lives and hospitalized and then went to a rehab. And after transferring his mother to a local rehab and begins to make plans for mom to move to the employee's home. So bringing mom to live with the employee. And then at the same time, the employee is looking at he or she has to set up local physicians. Mom needs a primary care physician. She needs a cardiologist. Mom needs a urologist, an orthopedic surgeon, possibly a neurologist. And then navigating the health insurance. Will they take out-of-state insurance? Also, if the mother's moved locally to a rehabilitation or skilled nursing facility, wants to discharge mom early because they tell the child that your mother no longer meets the Medicare regulations nor meets the definition of what constitutes skilled care. Employee has not yet moved mom into her home, does not have unfortunately the discharge plan in place and the home health aides in place, and is still trying to get work done. So this is a typical daughter that would contact our elder care office for planning. So this is your, poster child for the type of individuals that we work with that Kathleen and I in our office works with on a daily basis. So this is a full-time job, dealing with all of the navigation of the elder care maze or puzzle, as we like to say, dealing with a parent. So when we say a parent, we mean a parent. And Kathleen and and we say a puzzle, it is a puzzle. So this is what we typically like to show our clients or their caregivers as to some of the issues involved in caring for an aging parent. The parent and child is in the middle, and our focus is to navigate the issues involved, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's veterans benefits, whether it's durable medical equipment, prescription drug coverage, health insurance, what Medicare covers, does not cover, what services that mom can receive in the home. So whether you're an employee or whether you're an employer, our goal with Kathleen and I is to assist our clients on an ongoing basis to put these pieces of a puzzle together. So one of the issues when you're looking at elder care, why the increased need? First of all, why compared to say 50 years ago when we look at the distinction between child care and elder care issues, first of all, this I think everyone would be familiar. First of all, people are living longer. People are living longer, and what does that mean? That means that there's a better chance that they may become disabled and an individual may need some form of long-term care. The other issue is the COVID-19 effect. And I'm going to talk about COVID in relation to elder care, and there's certainly some interesting issues that have occurred. And we'll talk about this in another half hour or so later on in the presentation, specific some of the COVID issues involved in caring for an aging parent. But what I will say is that there are certainly issues to the extent that arguably there's going to be more generational households going forward. Why? Well, one of the reasons is that a child may hesitate to place their loved one in independent living, assisted living, in a nursing home. And maybe they would want to bring that child into the home. Bring the parent into the child's home because there's currently visitation restrictions in play in visiting a loved one in a long-term care. And Kathleen, can you touch upon some of the other issues, especially with multi-generational households that you are seeing and you're counseling caregiver children and their parents on a daily basis, some of the other issues involved with bringing a parent into the home or parent and child now living together?
Absolutely. I think as we're talking about trends, we hear more and more that, millennials who are having children are waiting till later in life. So these parents of young children are now caring for their adult parents who are in their home. So they may have children that are still in grade school, early high school, who aren't out of the house yet. So in addition to caring for the needs of their aging parent and managing all of their healthcare needs, making sure they're seeing their doctors, they're doing the same for their young children. So it creates a conflict for the parent or the child, but also the parent of the younger children in managing all of these needs and most likely maintaining a full-time job while doing so.
And we'll touch more upon that as we go. So I think, yeah, and also women, so the other issue compared to 50 years ago, that's why I think there's a distinction between childcare issues several decades ago and the caregiving. It goes without saying, since this is a chamber event, women have joined the workforce in much greater numbers compared to 50 years ago. But here's the deal, folks. Although they have a double duty, because although they joined the workforce in greater numbers than ever before over the past several decades, they have not abandoned their caregiving roles at home, whether it's child care or elder care. So women still are maintaining what would be a traditional care issues, even though obviously they've joined in the workforce in similar numbers to men. The good news here also is men have in greater numbers increasingly taken the role of caregiving. So that's good news. Share the work. There's nothing wrong with that. So, and also, and Kathleen counsels families 5 days a week. There are more options to care for family members in a home and community setting. There are all different services, which we're going to spend a little time talking about, whether it's home care, whether it's adult medical day care, whether it's respite care. There are so many more services, and sometimes covered through veterans benefits, sometimes covered through state assistance, to keep a loved one at home. And what I will tell you is that in many ways, it's actually more difficult to keep a loved one at home than it is to have them move to an independent living or assisted living or unfortunately a nursing home. And one of the reasons is because in a home setting, you're fending for yourself. You have to juggle the home care. You have to juggle medication dispensing and durable medical equipment, as opposed to, it's a totally independent setting, as opposed to living in a long-term care setting where these services are provided for you. So living at home, certainly in a least restricted environment, is always a good thing. But there can be some negatives, lack of socialization, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The next slide is what's called the elder care continuum. And Kathleen, can you touch upon explain what this is about and how this impacts individuals?
Sure. So if you look at the elder care continuum, you look at 4 facets. You have the ability and health of an individual. You have the residential setting where that individual resides, the cost of care, and also, as Jerry mentioned, ways to pay for supports and care wherever that individual may reside. So it's a continuum in the sense that you have someone that could be very functionally stable, residing in their own independent home, managing their own care needs, and up until their death, there are a number of opportunities for them, whether that's transitioning within their own home setting, putting in the supports like home care, whether that's skilled or non-skilled, hospice, considering adult medical day programs, resources to keep them at home in the least restrictive environment. But keeping in mind that as they transition, as their care needs increase from a functional standpoint, and the services are put in place to make sure they're safe wherever they may be, understandably, that cost of care is going to increase over time. And there are public benefits to help support, whether that's home care or adult medical day. Insurance may cover some visiting home care, physical therapy, occupational therapy, nursing services. There are benefits available, but you can see in this continuum that as your care needs increase, as your residential setting changes and you're requiring more and more support, naturally that cost of care is going to increase over time.
And when we look at this, the left is minimal care, the right is the maximum amount of care. And when we, our focus is to stay to the left, really, of the nursing home, assisted living in the left, basically. So, and that is really what we have to juggle, because there are limited benefits available to cover services outside of a nursing home. And of course, if you're going to talk, if you're an adult child who, as an employee, if you had to ask your parent, well, where, mom, dad, do you want to go to a nursing home? Of course, you know what the answer is going to be. So everyone wants to stay out of a nursing home if at all possible. But it's more and more difficult to care for a loved one in a home care setting. So that's important to keep in mind. So let's talk about some working caregiver statistics. So this is an AARP study that's about 5 years old. But according to the ARP 2015 study, 1 in 6 Americans workers report assisting with elder care. So that's slightly less than 20%. 70% of workers, but here's the deal, 70% of working caregivers suffer work-related difficulties related to caring for an aging parent. So the vast majority can't get all their work done, and they have to rearrange work schedule, decrease hours, unpaid leave. I think, as I said before, because since women still have not abandoned their traditional caregiving roles, the impact is higher for women than it is men. Now, the interesting part with the COVID-19 effect is very interesting, and we'll talk a little more about that. In a weird way, has COVID-19 actually helped an employee who's with elder care issues? The answer arguably could be yes, but in other ways it's made things more difficult, and we'll talk about that. Because it obviously, with people, the majority of workers, at least up until recently, and maybe even continuing to work, mainly the majority working remotely, well, obviously it allows for a flex schedule, or maybe your parents living with you and you're there during the course of the day to provide meals, to supervise the parent, assist them with what are called ADLs, activities of daily living. It's made other things more difficult, and we'll talk a little more about that, but it's been an interesting situation with COVID. But some employer statistics, 53% of caregivers report their supervisor aware of their caregiving. So the other way to look at that is almost 47% of employers are not aware of the issues that their employees face. Now, if you're an employer, that should cry out, well, maybe we should talk, I should talk to my employees a little more, or have HR or the manager of that department. What's going on with at home? How can we help you? And that's what we're going to spend a little time talking about today. Caregiving is shown to reduce employee work productivity by 18.5% on average. And 25% of employed caregivers state they have access to employer-sponsored support, which including group discussions, ask a nurse type, financial legal consultant, assisted living counselors, and otherwise. So that means 75% of your employees, on average, do not have access to employer-sponsored support. And we'll talk a lot about why that's so important in a short while. And why is this important for employers? Why should you, as an employer, be concerned about elder care issues for employees? Why? Because it costs you money, that's why. So the MetLife study of American businesses concluded that American businesses lose almost $34 billion each year due to employee elder care issues. And that includes replacing employees. If an employee has to stop work, maybe to be a full-time parent for full-time caregiver for the parent, $6.5 billion workday interruptions, dealing with elder care crisis, like we used as an example at the outset of this webinar, partial absenteeism. What does that mean? Well, they're working remotely from home, or they're working in the office, but their head's not in the game because they're dealing with elder care issues throughout the day for the parent. And then supervisor time, unpaid leave, etc. 4.7 billion. So that's all part of the cost to employers. So, and when we talk about juggling work and caregiving, I guess the question is, what are the fears of an employee? Well, I think as I'm sure you can guess, the employee caregiver fear they may not be able to reach their full potential as an employee in relation to their role as a caregiver. So they may not be, they may be, maybe do not get that, oh, sorry about that. They maybe do not get that promotion that they're entitled to. So what are also the working caregiver's experience? Sorry about that. We're having some technical difficulties here. All right. Isolation, stress, depression, lost wages. So, and I don't know what's going on. It has a mind of its own, but we'll just move on. So so if you're stressed, and it takes an emotional as well as physical toll on being a caregiver. So if you are stressed, then you really are not able to really fulfill your duties that the employee requires. So, and how does it affect employers? Because of the increase, if there's the increased cost of healthcare, will increase your health insurance. Caregivers tend to develop chronic conditions, increased costs associated with job performance of working family caregivers. So it has a significant effect, no doubt. And again, we alluded to this earlier. Diminished job performance. You're taking personal phone calls to talk to your parents' doctors, juggling taking your parent to the doctor. I talked about absenteeism already. They're late for work, leaving early, sick days, mental and emotional distraction. But once again, of course, COVID kind of, late arrival. Well, if they're working remote, we don't have to about working late, but they're still, even if they're working 100% remotely currently, that absenteeism or partial absenteeism still apply, where they're having to deal with the needs of a parent. So what can we do with workplace accommodations? Well, and this is where the interesting part in some cases, COVID helps solve. Well, the majority of workers, I think, or at least, office workers, most likely are still working remotely today. So if that's the case, then remote employment helps them. It also creates other issues. They still may take unpaid leave of absences. Well, work-related travel, for the most part, there is no work-related travel these days. So that problem arguably solves itself. And also maybe refusing new assignments, and maybe they can't take increased responsibility on an ongoing basis. So there are some workplace accommodations. In some ways, COVID has actually complicated things at the same time. Can you touch upon, Kathleen, some of the complications you have seen dealing with families and assisting children, well, in this case, employees? Sure. Who are dealing with elder care issues?
I think naturally, and I know this slide was bouncing off, but you have the natural issues surrounding caregiver burnout. So naturally, someone who is experiencing a lot of stress, it might take a physical toll on them, but also a mental toll on their health. They could be feeling isolated. They're not seeing, sometimes for employers, getting out of the house is a respite for them. Seeing their coworkers in the office gives them some relief from the burdens of caregiving, and now not to be able to leave their home for whether it's just finding time to do something on their own. They're now feeling that guilt of am I doing enough at home? Am I doing enough? Am I on top of managing my full-time job, I'm caring for my loved one at home. So it's this sense of stress and guilt upon themselves without any relief, without any opportunity to leave the home and like I said, find time for themselves. So it's really juggling that time. And I think, as with anything, when we work in positions where we are connected to our email and connected to our phones constantly, we don't give ourselves that separation. So really they're not getting any respite from the burdens of caregiving, but also their jobs, and the mesh of those two can contribute to caregiver burnout, the depression, feeling isolated, feeling withdrawn, and like I said, having the physical impact on them.
So what are some of the working caregivers' needs? We talked about flex work schedule. And if you're an employer, what can you do? Well, provide information about services and aging in general, that minimizes the required time. So it may not be enough to just give them a name because they still need they're on hold, they're playing phone tag. Support from coworkers and supervisors. Care coordination or care management services, help in making decisions about care and related issues. So, Kathleen, can you just talk about your role within the elder care office?
Absolutely.
Why would someone see the need for a care coordinator or a geriatric social worker? Talk about your role to help families navigate and why that's so important for, and if you are a caregiver child, for both the employee perspective as well as the employer perspective.
So if you take a look at even the case study that you offered in the beginning of this presentation, typically those calls that we receive from sons, from daughters who have a parent with a crisis, in a crisis situation, oftentimes we hear, I don't even know where to start. Where do I begin? Who do I contact at the nursing home, or who do I contact at the hospital? I don't know how much money mom had, or I don't know if she had, when her powers of attorney were established. So it's important to have somebody that can walk you through and navigate the healthcare system for you. There's a lot of confusion surrounding what insurance pays, what can I get via private funds, am I eligible for Medicaid, am I eligible for veterans benefits? So it's helpful to have someone that can both understand and navigate the healthcare system. And in our office, as the care coordinators, work with the attorneys to figure out the financial and the legal plan. So it's important to take that care-driven model of elder law, understanding what resource and services are available for your loved one, so that the attorney or whoever that you're working with can figure out, how do we pay for this care now? We know that mom needs X amount of care, whether that be at home or an assisted living or a nursing home, but where do we even begin to pay for those services? So being able to identify public benefits like Medicaid or veterans benefits, activating mom and dad's long-term care insurance policies, gives the family a better understanding that, and peace of mind knowing mom and dad are going to get the supports and services that they need, but we also have identified means to pay for that care.
So that's what really Kathleen does 5 days a week in the office, and her service is helping families navigate the process. I tell clients and prospective clients, they are more important than the attorney's role, because care comes first in our office. Get the care in place, and then we'll figure out how to pay for it. Also, as you know, it goes without saying, elder law professionals can assist, and then the employer should have policies and procedures for workplace programs that respect the privacy of the employees. Obviously, there's HIPAA laws that apply, and minimize the time required during working hours to accomplish those. And these caregiver programs benefit employers just as much as employees. So if you're an employer of any size and you have employees, addressing the employee's needs regarding elder care for a parent, why does it benefit them? Increased retention of highest performer, reduced absences, obviously, decreased benefit claims and improved productivity, less turnover, reduced partial absenteeism, or full absenteeism, lateness, and enhance the company's image. That is a company I want to work for, that really understands my needs and respects my needs. And it's not just about childcare issues, because Kathleen used the, burning the candle on both ends, so-called sandwich generation. You have that 45 to 50-year-old child who still may have minor children or children still in the home, as well as dealing with an aging parent. They're trying to address both issues. But if you're a company of any size that really understands the needs, that is a company most people want to work for. And if you look at the reasons people leave for another position, why they leave your company, it's not about salary. It's something else that in addition to salary, maybe that it's not challenging enough for them. Maybe, but in some cases, maybe it's because the employee does not feel the employer really respects what they're going through and what they need. And maybe they need a place that really understands what they're dealing with. So it enhances the company's image. It shows you truly care about the individual, that you're employee centered, and that it's not always about the bottom line. So some cost effective strategies for enhancing your workplace. First of all, we talked about the policy of valuing your caregiver employees based upon performance. To a certain extent, isn't that what we're doing now? It's not, especially in the remote setting, does it really make a difference the amount of hours that an individual employee is working? When you come down to it, isn't it really based upon what the results are? Some companies will say, you work 4 days a week, we're going to give you Fridays off, take care of a parent or something, or you're going to work from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or something like that. Or is it really, especially in the remote setting, isn't it results really matter? So, maybe consider a policy if you're an employer of valuing employees based upon performance. We talked about flex days, maybe compressed days, maybe a 4-day work week, and depending on what your business is. Employer awareness training programs, caregiver on-site education and support, training in elder care issues. For example, how do you choose a home care agency? What is adult medical daycare? What types of care is rendered in an assisted living setting? What benefits does Medicare cover? How about, does an individual have a long-term care insurance policy? If your parent or spouse has a long-term care insurance policy, how do you decipher what the benefits are? How do you file a claim? What benefits are covered? What's the per day coverage? If you're a veteran or a widowed spouse if your parent's a veteran, a widowed spouse of an eligible veteran, as Kathleen briefly commented upon, what benefits are available for home care? How about housing? All of these issues can be valuable to ease the burden on the employee caregiver. And of course, referral to professionals, whether it's an independent geriatric care manager, home care agency, an elder care attorney, a psychologist in some cases, or maybe a physician specialist as needed. So what does the future hold? Well, clearly, as we previously stated, managing work and family has become a major issue for both family caregivers as well as employers. And the important part to understand is that older adults currently comprise 13% of the US population. In 20 years, that's going to double to 25%. Older adults are living longer and healthier. There will be larger number of adults who require significant care. And there's another way to look at this as well, I would argue. The other way to look at this is that you may also be, as people live longer, you may have to deal with this not just from, if you're an employer, not just as working with assisting your employees who are caring for an aging loved one. The employee, him or herself, may individually have care issues that they need to address. So if you're an employer, you need to be familiar with what some of the services are available for that employee. And of course, there's issues related to that. That's beyond the scope of our presentation. I'm not an employment lawyer. My clients are not in the employee, and my clients are not the employer. We don't do employment law or labor law issues, but clearly those laws apply regarding age discrimination. And those issues are going to be at the forefront if you're an employer going forward. And how do you deal with those issues? It may be related to dementia or Alzheimer's disease. When do you tell an employee, hey, Joe, Mary, it's time, we're going to have to let you go because you're making mistakes. You can't get the work done like it needs to get done. And how do you have those conversations if you're an employer? And if you haven't already had that, and you have 20 plus employees, you will sooner or later. Those issues you're going to have to deal with those issues. So there'll be a large number of adults who require significant care. So as a business owner, if you are an employer that you offer these caregiver benefits to help their employees you arguably will have a competitive advantage over those who do not, because you care. And this is why people stay with a company for many years. This is why they're attracted to the company. It's not always about the money. It's not always about the salary. It's about the care that they're receiving. And by the way, again, in the chat room, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to address those questions as we go. So I don't know if there's any questions as of yet, but if you have any, please feel free to type them in the chat room. I don't see any questions. Am I correct, anyone? Oh, sorry about that. Skipped. So some of the concepts, and let's talk about really where we are related to caregiving over the past 5 or 6 months. First of all, and how it relates to both the employee and the employer. First of all, with regard to COVID as a whole, Kathleen, could you just touch upon some of the issues that you've dealt with related to COVID, and what some of the caregiver children are dealing with now that maybe 6 months ago really was not an issue? Can you touch upon that? And
sure.
What do you see on a daily basis, or what's the caregiver child, in other words, the employee, telling you? What are their fears and concerns for their parents?
So we have clients who are both residing in their homes, as well as skilled nursing communities, assisted living communities, and in independent living environments. Over the past 6 months, when COVID hit, communities closed off to visitors. So these residents of the nursing home and assisted livings couldn't see their loved ones. And in our office, we often say that although they might be living in a skilled nursing or an assisted living environment, the visiting family members are a key part of their caregiving team. So with the families not being able to visit our clients and their children, who we often communicate with on a regular basis, have really been experiencing the negative effects of COVID, and not necessarily related to the virus, but they're feeling, depressed, they're isolated. Families have had limited contact with them. They're trying to reach nursing home administrators and social workers and the nurses treating their moms or dads. But unfortunately, these facilities are understandably very overwhelmed and stressed, that the communication is lacking. So on our end, we're hearing, we are advocates in our office, and we do our best to ensure that our clients and the caregivers are getting their needs addressed and their concerns addressed. But these facilities were hit, unfortunately, very hard, and the employees and many of your employees who have loved ones in these types of settings were feeling helpless. We received calls regularly from families just crying because they haven't been able to hear from their loved one or see their loved one, or were limited to a video call maybe 1 or 2 times a week. So it's been a very, very difficult times, and we're slowly getting back to outside visits or 15-minute visits in the lobby, but the caregivers and the loved ones of these individuals are still experiencing the separation and the anxiety and the guilt surrounding having their loved ones in a long-term residential setting. It's been a really hard time on them.
Yeah, so Kathleen and our 4 other geriatric social workers have been probably doing more advocacy than they've ever had to do, because they have to keep that lines of communication open between the family and the resident, who may be in independent living, assisted living, or nursing home, as Kathleen referred to, there are significant visitation restrictions, and we'll talk a little more about that. So one of the major consequences of COVID, in addition to what to talk a little further what Kathleen just talked about, is that COVID exposed the inadequacies and inequities of our long-term care system. We all, unfortunately, have seen the statistics of the number of deaths in nursing homes in New Jersey as well as nationwide. 50% of all deaths in New Jersey have been nursing home residents. And COVID has negatively affected those of color in a much greater percentages than white Americans. That's what the statistics bear out. So COVID exposed the inadequacies of our long-term system. I would argue COVID just brought to the forefront, brought to the surface what already existed, but now everyone can see it. So one of the issues is that one of the potentially, if we want to look on a positive sense, one of the positive changes related to COVID, related to long-term care, may be smaller communal housing. In other words, nursing homes, unfortunately, if you had a loved one in a nursing home, it's more of a hospital-like, institutional-like setting. Well, that's why, and that doesn't work very well for infectious diseases like COVID. So one of the arguments is that, well, maybe small communal housing. Another option is that, related to COVID, is seniors are staying home longer. So it raises the importance of home care. As Kathleen said, people are afraid children are afraid they can't visit their loved ones. So seniors are staying at home longer. So the importance, and that means then juggling more issues in relation to being a caregiver employee. Parent moving in with the child because of isolation issues, because the child doesn't want to place the parent in some long-term care community because they couldn't visit him or her. Therefore, that raises the importance, arguably, of family agreement or sharing expenses, because when we look at potential cost of care and how care is paid for in the future, we do have to be concerned with the benefits that would be available in the future. And one of those benefits that can pay for long-term care in the future may be the state Medicaid system. And there's what's called a 5-year look back, where there would be limitations on the ability to gift funds during the 5-year period. So if a parent is living with a child or vice versa, since it's family transaction, in many cases there's commingling of funds, sharing of expenses. It's important at the outset to document whose expenses are whose, so it's not a problem later on with any, if you have to apply for Medicaid. So a lot of I see horror stories, people coming to me many years later. By the way, there was one question. I'm sorry I missed it. The question was, I referred earlier to a MetLife study regarding the loss of business related to an employee's elder caregiving needs. I believe that study was from 2010, so it is a 10-year-old study. So I tried to find more recent studies. There wasn't much out there. So so that study, I believe, was from about 10 years ago, from 2010. So importance of updating documents: your will, your financial, healthcare power of attorney, advance directive. Many people are contacting us because they want to get things in place now to avoid a crisis. What I will tell you is, a will is important, but a will only helps you when you're dead. We work with people who are living, so I'm strongly advise making sure that if you are a caregiver child, caregiver employee, make sure your wills, and not just your wills, but your financial and the powers of attorney are updated. Plan before a crisis. It's always good to plan before a crisis arrives. Because you want to plan when you have time to think it out. It's never a positive to think in a moment of a crisis. Socialization is important, and especially in today's world. And that's one of the problems with COVID. When back in March, when COVID specifically in New Jersey and New York was really starting to get really bad, and deaths were occurring in nursing homes, the New Jersey Department of Health just shut it down. They shut no visits whatsoever. Now, as of Father's Day in middle of June, it's outside visits are permitted in New Jersey in nursing homes. But what else has that caused? That's caused a lack of socialization. People are isolated in their rooms. They even seniors who, you know, I'm sure some of you who have parents and 70 plus, you know, you don't visit parents as much as you used to. They may not come in. They may not want to come into your house. You may not want to visit them in their home, and so it's isolating. Or maybe they don't have visitors. Maybe the grandchildren haven't visited, especially those seniors with pre-existing conditions. So it's very isolating, and so in a long-term care community, the lack of visitation can have serious physical and emotional repercussions, such as depression. And we're seeing, and I say, and there's some truth to it, if COVID does not kill our senior clients, especially those in some form of a long-term care setting, the isolation will. And so hopefully that needs to change, and that needs to change today in the state of New Jersey. There's certainly proponents, advocacy groups are recommending that. Governor Murphy and the Department of Health has not changed the visitation restrictions as of yet. Also, I mentioned this earlier, it's important if you're an employer to give an employee information. What benefits are available? If you're a veteran, what benefits are available through the VA? We work with a lot of veterans or a widowed spouse of an eligible veteran. Medicaid is what other government programs, your health insurance. If you live in certain townships, what's available through the township. For example, in Cherry Hill, for example, you can contact the township, maybe not in COVID days, but pre and post COVID days I'm talking about, where you can do some handyman work, have a handyman work, and there's no cost, or there's low cost, there's reduced costs available. So some townships through the township office may have certain programs. So whether it's a township-wide, county-wide, statewide, VA under federal regulations, etc. What benefits are available can be very important. One of the other issues I want to address is, looking at this in a larger sphere, and is what are the other consequences of COVID? And this is for, if you're an employee or employer, or I would argue, if you're a human being, this applies to you. And And what some of the I like to end on a positive note. So what are some of the other consequences over the past into the 6th month of COVID-19? First of all, I touched upon this earlier. One of the positive aspects related to long-term care and senior care, at least, is it has given us an opportunity to fix what is wrong with long-term care and our healthcare system. We know the environment of nursing homes may not be the greatest for our senior client, for the residents there is number one. Lack of funding, lack of support. They were basically sitting ducks. And as to our healthcare system, well, maybe we saw the issues related to where COVID has proportionally negatively affected those of color and as well as the lower socioeconomic scale compared to other individuals. So we see that what needs to do. Now we just need the will to do it. We need to take better care of our vulnerable population. And one way, and to take also another benefit, arguably, of COVID, it's forced us to think about what really matters. What really matters as employers. If you're an employer, if you're an employee, think about, since everything we're doing at the chamber through the rest of the year is remote, so we're not traveling to and fro. Most of our networking events are remote, and maybe client meetings are remote. We're not traveling the way we once were. I typically, every 3 months or so, I'm somewhere across the country at some national conference for 3 or 4 days. Obviously, since February, I haven't done any of that. The question then asks us, well, let's think about this. What really matters? Is taking care of our elderly parent? Is that more important? Taking care of a spouse? If you're an employer, addressing your employees' needs? Maybe we don't need to do what we previously did. Maybe we don't need to go to all those networking events. Or at least in person. Maybe we don't need to go to all of those conferences. Maybe we don't need to go to all of those dinners after hours. Or maybe we can do things differently, whether virtually, or maybe we don't need to go to all those marketing events. Will it make a difference? I don't know, but it's given us over the past 6 months an opportunity to re-examine what is really important, what's really important from the employer perspective, and what's really important from the employee perspective. And it's an opportunity that we wouldn't otherwise have. So it's important to take advantage of that. Take advantage of time that we have. Obviously, time spent with our families that we probably wouldn't have done previously. And it forced us to slow down, obviously. We didn't have a choice. Things shut down. So sometimes, what do we do with all our time? I know I'm sleeping a little later because I don't have 7:30 a.m. networking events, or I have to be in downtown Philadelphia for a 7 a.m. meeting or a 7:30 meeting, or try and get in there early to beat traffic. So, so it gives us a chance to slow down. We may never have this opportunity again in our lives. So let's take advantage of that. And also, we walk walking in our neighborhoods, and we're probably more grateful, more empathetic. People are much friendlier than previous. So this is all related to, thinking about what's really important in life. Kathleen, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and I think just touching upon, kind of bringing everything full circle, we want our work environments. I think it's a shared desire to have a safe and welcoming and open workplace. So although you might not have all of the answers and all of the resources to provide for your employer, I shouldn't say resources, but you may not have all the answers, but if you just give them that warm and welcoming environment to come to you if they're having issues. I think that's a key way of avoiding any kind of burnout is encouraging people to ask for help. And if they know that you are someone that they can go to just to seek help or point them in some kind of direction, I think that's a great value of an employer.
Thank you, Kathleen. Couple questions. One of the questions is, are there employee benefit programs that offer plans to adult care needs so an employee can support their aging parent and have care support as they have for childcare? The answer is yes. There are what's called employee assistance programs. I mean, we're not one of them, but if you're a larger employer, you may want to contact HR. There may be EAP, so to speak, which acronym for employee assistance programs that you can reach out to. We're not associated with employee assistance programs. We're fee for service as an elder law firm or as a law firm in general, but so you might want to reach out to, again, if you're a large enough company, whether you have an EAP in place. Another question was asked, as an HR professional, can I have an idea of the charges that employees can expect for receiving support from geriatric social workers? And then what materials can be shared with employees about your services? Well, we'll be happy to email. You can go on our website, rothkopflaw.com, that fully explains the services and how we operate. But we would be happy to send you information regarding brochures regarding those services. With regard to charges, fees, we're a law firm, so that means you're paying legal fees. We think it's very important, Kathleen and I, to incorporate care coordination, geriatric social worker within an elder law practice, because the most important issue involved is regarding care. And as you'll see the slide, I started out with putting the different pieces of a puzzle together. This is the goal. The goal is to put these pieces of the puzzle together to ease the burden on the employee caregiver. So we charge legal fees, and the legal fee really depends on what we're doing. It includes care coordination services if we're dealing with individuals with chronic illnesses. There's also, we're not the only game in town. There's also services through the Office of Aging in the county. There could be services to what's called a private GCM, a private geriatric care manager, who typically charges by the hour. But you can pay a couple $100s or several $1,000s for services depending on what's needed. Some of it, and in many cases, especially if you're the employer or employee, for example, Kathleen you may spend 6 hours accomplishing something that Kathleen can take Kathleen 20 minutes, because she knows what to do. She knows who to contact. She knows the questions to ask. She knows the people to reach out to. And that's, and I'm sure we all have our own specialties with what we're doing. And I'm sure the same can be applied. It will take us 6 hours to accomplish something that you can accomplish in 20 minutes, because that's what you do for a living. So that's all part of it. But ultimately, the goal is to put pieces of a puzzle together. And our goal is to provide is to be a resource. So we're doing this. For the past few years, we had 250-person in-person elder care symposium where we bring in national speakers. We have vendors, we have exhibitors, and it's a whole full day event of laughing and crying together and addressing elder care advocacy issues. But in the COVID era, everything has gone virtual, so we actually broke it down to a 4-part series, and there's the information on that we have, and you're welcome to register. There's the website right there to register, and there is no fee to register. You can as well. And the keynote speaker will be Dr. Josh Luke. He's a healthcare futurist associated with UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles, obviously. So that's it. So Kathleen and I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you for the Chamber for your assistance today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. The website's rothkopflaw.com. And I thank you for everyone who participated. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email myself or Kathleen, and Kathleen, could you put your email in the chat?
Absolutely, sure.
That'd be great. So thank you so much for your time, on our website as well. Thank you so much for your time today, and I'll turn it back to Meredith.
Thank you so much, Jerry and Kathleen. That was a great presentation. You know, in our everyday lives, these issues are so important in being able to support our employees so they can be productive and effective in the workplace, but now more than ever with the challenges that we're facing on a day-to-day basis with COVID-19. I just want to give a quick reminder to everybody that we will be sending out a survey later this afternoon to get your feedback on today's presentation. If you have any additional questions for our panelists, you can submit them in that survey and we'll make sure to get them to them. We will also include a recording of this presentation, and we can also include the contact information for the firm so you can reach out to them directly with any additional questions you might have. I want to thank everybody for participating today, to Jerry and Kathleen for presenting and coordinating this presentation for our members. And with that, I'd like to wish everybody a great day and a great rest of your summer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.